I made a video a couple of days ago stating how the globalist liberal establishment was going to crack down on Elon Musk's X platform, formerly known as Twitter. Now, only since I made that video, things have ramped up quite considerably, and leftists are already talking about curbing speech on X or even banning it entirely. Now, I think we all know they're going to hold to the line that they have to do this to quote-unquote curb hate speech, to stop potential riots, and to ensure social media is a safe place where you only hear the truth. But in reality, we also know what that means. Twitter will just become what it was before Elon Musk took it over. Essentially, it's just sanitized, establishment-approved opinions, all filtered through a leftist purity scanner to adhere to the latest woke cliches. And that will lead to an app that promotes the truth, TM, the sort of truth that good people listen to and right-minded folks, just like people at the BBC. And talking of the BBC, they've thrown their hat into the ring with regards to all of this after covering a story about a Tory councillor's wife who's due to be sentenced for posts she made on X before the riots. After the Southport stabbings, Lucy Connolly, a childminder from Northampton, stated on Twitter that she wanted hotels housing migrants to be set on fire and for mass deportation now. She also stated, "If that makes me a racist, so be it." Now, apparently she's going to get a quote-unquote substantial prison sentence for that crime. However, the BBC are more concerned that her post didn't actually break any rules on X. The BBC have actually interviewed the person that reported Mrs. Connolly for her comments, and they stated, "I don't think sites like X bear sole responsibility, but they play a significant role in the spread of disinformation and should, as a bare minimum, follow their own code of conduct." However, the media do this to essentially give you their own opinion, i.e. the opinion you should have. They then go on to tell you about how Elon Musk took to the platform to comment on a previous conviction of a Northampton man who was jailed for copying Connolly's message, saying that it was messed up that he'd been given 38 months in jail. Now, it's clear that Connolly's original tweet was unwise, unhelpful and deeply unkind, and probably risky too, but giving a guy 38 months for retweeting it is messed up. But the narrative that the BBC and the rest of the liberal media want you to take away is that X is evil, it's a danger to democracy. And this is why you have left-wing commenters now stating that we should expect the ban of X that's happened in Brazil to be followed in Britain.
What's happening in Brazil right now is something that can happen in the UK very, very quickly. What ties in neatly is I believe that the general public have a very comfortable idea of what leadership looks like. To govern your country correctly sometimes requires a certain level of balls. And that is what Alexander de Moraes as a judge has shown.
Balls is a bit gender normative for a leftist to call on a classic part of the masculine anatomy to show courage and strength, isn't it?
Anyone in any account on X that were breaking the laws of Great Britain by being violent and causing harm were given jail sentences and continue to do so.
Except when they're left-wing communists that the establishment like Nick Lowles, founder of Hope Not Hate. He famously tweeted out that a Muslim woman had acid thrown at her. So while one fella's getting 38 months for a retweet, Nick Lowles can get away scot-free without even a slap on the wrist because he said sorry.
So, if the X platform gets to that point where Elon Musk does not have processes in place to curb the polarization of dangerous leaning rhetoric, which causes harm in a country, Britain could also shut down X for its users.
And you might say, well, yeah, this is just a random BBC article and a rent-a-god progressive that appears on Good Morning Britain from time to time. Why should we care? However, what about Kamala Harris, someone who's apparently leading in the polls to be the next US president?
He has lost his privileges and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
You may have noticed two subtle pieces of misinformation from Kamala herself there. Firstly, she states social media companies are publishing their thoughts out to the world. But it's not social media companies publishing their thoughts, it's individuals. Now, you'd think that a would-be president of the United States might be aware of how free speech works. It means that people say stupid things from time to time, sometimes inflammatory things. However, that's the price that you often pay in order to explore what the truth may be in a given topic. Secondly, it's extremely egregious for Kamala Harris to come out and say that X has to follow the same rules as Meta when Mark Zuckerberg came out this week to state that Joe Biden had coerced him into taking a certain line on COVID-19. This is why it's clear as day that when she says
oversight or regulation,
she means dragging social media companies into line and having a very narrow window of acceptable conversation. And who do you think that's going to be dictated by? Hint, it's not going to be those on the right, traditionalists, conservatives, libertarians, or free speech advocates. It's going to be people like this guy from the centre of quote-unquote countering digital hate. This is an Imran Ahmed. Do you think he seems like a trustworthy person?
Should you be able to call for an armed revolution on social media?
No. Well, do you think they should? In what way is Donald
Well, he was
Trump?
banned from all the social media platforms.
Were you worried about his ability to get his message out?
Well, his ability to get his message out was definitely reduced significantly. As you said yourself, when you ban people from social media, you said it yourself, they lose reach, right?
It's sad to me that you can't define, that you can't see hate speech
sorry.
normally.
Just hold on a second, you're misrepresenting what I'm saying.
Again, rewind and just listen.
Good, I hope people do that because they'll see that you're misrepresenting what I'm saying.
For the main part, it's fucking obvious. I tell you what, you are being disrespectful to the people who do receive hate speech.
Like me.
I warn you that most of your listeners will think to themselves, actually, Constantine's being a bit of a dickhead right now.
And calling me a dickhead might be considered hate speech.
No, it's not hate speech, it's just good observation.
Now that was from an upcoming interview on the Trigonometry channel, which I'll be sure not to watch. If there was an entry for smug, condescending liberal with an authoritarian bent, I think this guy would pretty much fit that bill perfectly. Now these are exactly the sort of people that the Keir Starmers and Kamala Harrises of the world will employ to moderate speech across social media. This is why I keep saying on this channel that the split between the globalist liberals and the dissenters is getting so huge, and increasingly we can't even have an open conversation about that because speech is being throttled. But as I often summarise, this gives us an opportunity to wake up to what actually made our civilization work, to understand how it's falling apart and how we can rebuild it in the future. On top of that, I think it's a way to look away from the materialistic globalist liberal mainstream and start finding meaning and peace of our own. We are not getting it from our political leaders who seem actively against us at this point. What I mean is our political leaders just won't let us discuss the important issues of the day that lead to a strong sense of meaning, vitality and health. Henceforth, it's time for us to start thinking our own way, I believe. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below and do consider subscribing to the channel.